Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video I want to take some time to go over some of the new strategies that have evolved over the course of Season 2 here, specifically for some of the later bosses in Mythic Liberation of Undermine, now that we've had a bunch of nerfs coming in, as well as players have gained more gear and stacks of that 3% damage and healing increase. By far, the two most impacted bosses are One-Armed Bandit and Muggsy, so we're going to be focusing on them, and when it comes to those strategies, they specifically are aimed at reducing the amount of time that you have to actually hold your damage for versus the original boss strategies, which will speed up your kill times and in some cases will also reduce the amount of group damage or scary overlaps that your group has to deal with. So it actually does in some cases actually make these fights a bit easier. Now, I already do have individual boss guides going over, the mythic changes and our general strategies for both of these bosses, so I'm not going to be doing those, instead focusing specifically on what these new strategies are and how they actually differ from those original strategies. And I will also be linking our 2 kills of these bosses using these new strategies down in the description below if you want to look at them for yourself. Otherwise, let's start here on One-Armed Bandit, where the big change is that many guilds have opted to push after the 5th set of ads instead of the 6th set of ads. So that's a whole set that you need to not hold damage on the boss, which a lot of guilds are doing right now. Now, the main issue pushing one set early does is if you have any unplaced coils. So there's the coin and shock, the flame and shock, and the bomb and shock, which spawn those ads whenever the boss reaches full energy. Those coils, if you haven't placed them all already when you transition into phase 2, will automatically just drop down in like the middle of the arena. And so the last one you would do on set 6 using the previous strategy would have been the flame coil, and having those flame tornadoes spawning in the middle of the room is very, very bad. So in order to actually make this strategy work, we've needed to actually shuffle the order that you kill ads. And that actually starts with the very first ad set of the fight here. I'm just going to play the fight while we're talking about it. And instead of immediately spawning a coil, you're actually going to opt to do flame and coin off the top of the fight. That's the healing that you're going to be doing. So healing CDs can go ASAP at the start of the fight. But the important note there is that you do not have a coil after the first ad set, which means these puddles from the tank buster that you're placing, you need to place them well, because you will get your coil on the second ad set. So that's a bit of time where you're going to be very, very careful on your placement of these puddles. Otherwise, you can run into some positioning problems if people just don't realize that they have them. So you can see here again, we're going fire and coin off the top here. We're all stacked in the middle here for our healing. We're using that initially, and then our next one is going to be what our previous first one was, which is coin and shock. Just going to fast forward to the next set here. So now it's going to be coin and shock that we're going to be breaking, and that's going to give us a coil. Positioning wise, this goes in the exact same spot that you put it previously, just in the center, slightly skewed to where you're going to be putting all the ranged ones in this back corner. Again, a little fast forward to show you right there. And then that's kind of the story with these coils, is that you're placing them in the same spots. So like the bomb coil is still going to go up here. The flame coil is still going to go off in that corner, but you're doing those placements at different times. So you need to be aware of that. In terms of the third set, it's the same as before. It's still going to be flame and bomb. So you have those 3 bombs, which are CCable, and will shoot out the tornadoes, which you need to avoid. Luckily, with the nerfs of the tornadoes, it's a little less scary. You're not going to be absolutely owned if you get tapped by those tornadoes. I think they hit like 20% less or something like that, which is a nice change for sure. And then following that, the 4th set that's going to be where you place your flame and shock coil. So you are going to be having that flame coil a little bit longer than you would before. Previously, again, just fast forwarding here, this coil would happen on set number 6, so you would never need to deal with it during an ad set. Now we're doing it on set number 4, which does mean that there is going to be an ad set where you're going to be dealing with the flames coming from the one side of the room, which is going to be the next ad set, and then that last ad set, of course, or the last ad set is going to be the bomb coil, which again, you're dropping at the front of the room. So again, getting across the room here so we can place it deep in this corner when we actually dunk. Boom, tank jumps out, there's the coil, and now we are going to be playing this next ad set with these flames. And this is what you need to be aware of, specifically too, if you come over to this side as a melee, you need to be aware that you're very, very close to these tornadoes. Potentially it could be good to not go on the right side here if it's the melee one. As you can see, we're filling up this side of the room with these puddles, some awkward puddles there, but it's not the end of the world. And part of that is due to the fact that we do have a couple, or I guess a single less clear with this coil. And to make up for that, you may need to actually click this coil a couple times in phase 2. So that's something to be aware of. And again, try and only do that when the boss is reaching 100 energy. Don't just do it throughout the phase. So basically what you'll notice is this does skip the CC immune adds, the bomb plus coin combo. It's not necessary to do, and that is also probably one of the more annoying combos to do throughout this fight. So that's a positive for this strategy. You never need to worry about that. And again, it also means you will not need to ever worry about holding DPS. I think at some time when we're doing the old strategy, we were holding DPS for like 30 seconds to a minute at a time, and obviously no one likes to hold DPS. So this is a strategy that will allow you to continue to do the fight with very minimal to zero DPS holding, which is a positive in my book. Whether it's better than the previous strat in terms of a prog environment, I think is up for debate. Potentially you wouldn't be able to make this DPS check, but I think, you know, especially as we get further in this pack, especially especially as the gear, the turbo boost for gearing comes in, I think this will be a more and more common strategy that you see. Now let's go and talk about Muggsy here for a little bit. Basically, the strat that I briefly talked about in my actual Muggsy guide has come to fruition here, where people are dropping from 5 healers to 4 healers and then pushing the boss after the second Earth phase to avoid that third mindset of phase 1, that really difficult mindset. It avoids the additional stack on the boss, which reduces your raid damage intake in P2, which is why it's good to 4 heal instead of 5 heal. And also, like Bandit, it kind of eliminates that whole almost a minute of damage holding on the boss itself, which all DPS players everywhere rejoiced about. Now, pushing early here does change a few things with your strategy. Specifically in phase 1, phase 2 is almost entirely unchanged, which is nice. So first and foremost, it makes this first phase a pretty significant damage check, because you are needing to push the boss to that 40% threshold by 4 minutes into the fight. And so that does do a couple things. One, when these Rocketeers come out, you're going to be focusing the boss, cleaving off the boss instead of off the Rocketeers is a key difference here, because the Rocketeers are not a huge prior. You're only going to get 2 of them, and you need that boss damage. And so you want to do as much you can to min-max that. Also, as you get closer to that 4-minute mark, I can actually show you here on ours. As you get closer to that 4-minute mark, you're going to see that, you know, we get pretty close. We are going to be lusting early here by 10 seconds early, just to ensure that we hit this DPS check. And this isn't too big a deal. You're losing a bit of lust time below that 40% threshold, which is for phase 2, but you also have to consider you have a full extra DPSer available to you in this phase compared to the regular strategy. So losing a bit of lust is not actually a huge deal. If you consider that, you should still kill this boss well before you normally would, even with that you know, lost lust time. So do not be afraid to lust early here in order to meet that DPS check. Now, so you want to talk about point 2 in terms of changes. Your soak order. Your soak order on this boss fight is going to be a bit different. So previous strategy, you had your raid soak into immune soak, raid soak into immune soak in P2. Now, because we're doing -1 metal phase in phase 1, that means there's only 2 soaks in phase 1, which means the third soak is that immune soak you want in phase 2, which means your immune classes need to be on the odd soak. So the very first soak of the fight is going to be our immune classes. The rest of the raid is going to be into soak 2 of the fight instead, just to make sure, again, that third soak is the immune classes. Again, something to keep in mind, it's a pretty good chance that the non-immune player, is targeted by this initial soak. So if they need to make sure they pop a pretty large defensive in order to survive this initial hit. It's not too bad with 6 players soaking, so it's not the end of the world. And then they also need to make sure they don't get into that second soak, because it will just instantly one-shot them. Now, in terms of that second soak, let's go forward to that one, because it also needs to be in a different spot here, because we really need that puddle in the middle of the room for phase 2, the first frost boots of phase 2, and because we're only getting 2 of them across this initial phase, we basically skip the placement for the puddle here, and we immediately put that second puddle, which is being fully group soaked, into the center of the room instead of along the edge. So again, this group soak is going to be everyone that isn't an immunity, and it goes center of the room to help us for phase 2, and it's still usable for that late phase 2 one. You're no longer doing the jumping shenanigans with the one on the wall here. Just something to keep in mind. This is going to affect how you play the second Earth phase of this phase. So let's talk about that, because that's the final and probably biggest change of this strategy. One, the positioning of the jails needs to be significantly adjusted. Fast forward a bit here, but as you can see, first off, we have all 3 jails in the Earth side here, and we have shifted them slightly because you don't need to, there's no fire puddle here stopping you. You don't need to throw another jail over here. You just don't need that space, right? So you can instead shift all 3 of these jails to be here. We're still doing the same thing where like this is going to be front left, this is front right, and then we have back left down here. So again, it's a very similar orientation, but less distance to run, so it's easier to actually get everywhere. And it's just a little bit nicer formation wise. Space, it's the same deal. You're going to still have a pretty significant amount of space to play in the intermission, so it's not really a big deal there, and just kind of compacts everything a little bit, which is nice. We are dragging the boss into a similar spot again between front left and back left, with the same markers that we used during progression here for these. And again, you're going to see it go out. We're going this, again, pretty compacted formation here, where everyone is relatively close to the boss. Same strategy in terms of dealing with these jails and everything that we did in the initial video. But importantly, because that fire puddle that you're going to be using to clear the frost boots is in a different spot, the way you actually read the orientation of the liquid weak aura, which assigns which jail you need to break your frost boot behind, is a bit different. So let's just fast forward here a little bit. The frost boots are going to be coming out shortly, so at this point everyone is going to the middle of the room on the edge there to clear their frost boots instantly. They come out, and now you look at these, you basically, you have 3 jails to work with here, which makes things a little bit easier. We will have people assigned to left and right from that liquid weak aura, and how you read this is if you're standing here looking at these jails, and so left would be over here, and then right would be over here, one of these two. We just if you're right, just pick one of these two, whichever one is easier for you to get behind. Do that. Left is always going to be this one back here. And again, the orientation is you're in the room, in this fire, looking out towards basically my character. And that's how you do the orientation for this. That's what worked for us anyways. And then we move the boss just past this third jail so that this jail can be used for the icicles. We are going to be not moving the boss over to the metal here because we want the boss to be here at the start of intermission. And so the important thing for this next frontal is to make sure that you sweep across both of these shielded ads, because there are still ads over there and we do not want them to be unshielded. And so everyone is basically going to be on the earth side of the boss, and then whoever gets targeted by this last frontal, make sure they sweep across the ads here and breaks both the shields just to make sure they're both gone. Boom, just like that. And then again, you're transitioning here. This is where you want to be at 40% health. And again, we did lose a little bit early just to make sure that we met that DPS check. So you may need to do that as well. And then outside this, the fight is exactly the same intermission, exactly the same phase 2. You're just going to be taking a little bit less damage because the boss has 1 less stack of his buff. And you have 1 extra DPSer to help handle this phase. So it should end a little bit quicker than the previous strategy. Which again, if you're interested in, I will link the guide videos to the original One-Armed Bandit and original MYTHIC strategies down in the description as well. But there we have it, guys. That is my overview of some of the significant strat changes to the later mythic bosses after nerfs, more gear, and more stacks of that raid buff. If you have any more questions regarding these bosses, please do leave them down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, shout out to all my amazing Patreons for their continued support, and I'll see everyone in the next video.